In the year 2000, General Electric was worth $600 billion, the single most valuable company on the planet. By 2018, more than $500 billion of that wealth had evaporated. It disappeared slowly across 2 decades. GE broke itself apart to survive, and the piece that remained, the standalone jet engine division, is now worth over $300 billion. Let the math on that sink in. This single original industrial core is worth far more today than the entire massive corporate empire was worth at its lowest point in 2018. Which leaves us with a $500 billion math problem. If the core industrial business was always this highly valued, how did 20 years of aggressive corporate expansion actively destroy so much wealth? During his tenure as CEO, Jack Welch realized a stark reality about modern business. Financial lending and credit markets generated faster, smoother profits than building physical factories. When a factory struggles, the failure is obvious to everyone. The assembly lines stall. But when a financial portfolio rots, the damage can be legally disguised for years, buried deep inside complex balance sheets. Under Welch, a division called GE Capital, which started as a simple tool to help consumers buy home appliances on credit, quietly morphed into an opaque, sprawling bank trading in commercial real estate and insurance. This chart shows the internal makeup of GE's earnings over time. By the time Welch company's total profits, Immelt pushed into the riskiest sectors, buying a subprime mortgage lender right as the United States housing market reached its absolute peak. Then, in September 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed. The global credit markets completely froze. GE Capital had gorged on short-term debt to fund its long-term investments. Overnight, the company literally could not access the cash required to keep the lights on. The United States government stepped in with $139 billion in loan guarantees. Immelt also secured an emergency lifeline from Warren Buffett, but it came with a punishing 10% dividend payout. GE survived the immediate liquidity crisis, but leadership kept the financial parasite alive inside the company, ignoring the massive vulnerabilities that had nearly killed them. Immelt's ultimate miscalculation arrived in 2015. GE spent $10.6 billion to acquire Alstom, a French manufacturer of massive gas-fired power turbines. The deal assumed the world's demand for gas power would only grow. Instead, the cost of solar energy was rapidly falling, and wind power was aggressively scaling up across the globe. Utility companies immediately began canceling their orders for large gas turbines. The multi-billion-dollar market GE had just doubled down on was shrinking fast. 4 years later, the math became undeniable. GE was forced to take a staggering $23 billion write-down, effectively declaring the asset they bought was now worth negative $12 billion. The Alstom disaster exposed a fatal flaw in GE's methodology. They mistook sheer size, boardroom applause, and complex financial maneuvering for actual business safety. The bill finally came due in 2018. Long-hidden insurance liabilities ruptured. The stock plummeted below $10, and GE was humiliatingly stripped from the Dow Jones Industrial Average. The 130-year-old conglomerate had no choice but to break itself apart into independent pieces just to survive. But when you burn away the decades of bad acquisitions, the massive corporate debt, and the financial engineering, you are left with something unexpected. The original jet engine division, a business built entirely on creating physical, highly precise machines, survived the wreckage intact and tremendously profitable. General Electric spent 20 years proving a simple, brutal lesson. Wall Street accounting tricks and stock buybacks can never replace the unglamorous, difficult work of building things that actually work.